let's try and do the second half equally on time so that we can get to our networking drinks. The events team have promised me that we have some fine wines to drink for our networking drinks when we finish. As I said before the break, we've got 3 sessions now. We have Michelle Whelan from VMLY&R Creative Commerce, a WPP company to start with, and she is having a fireside chat without a fireside with our own Omar Oak. So Omar, if you'd like to come up to stage, please. And Michelle from my right. Oh, it's almost like it's coordinated there, isn't it? Would you like to come up the stairs here?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that warm reception on a cold day. It is appreciated. Please, Michelle Whelan, in case you don't know, she is CEO of VMLY&R Commerce, which was previously known as Geometry Global. Start off, for anyone who doesn't know, what is VMLY&R Commerce? How is it different from Geometry? Is it just about a rebrand? How are you different?
Great questions.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for staying after the keynote Sir Martin's oral speech. Sir Martin was my boss, clearly, at WPP, and yes, digital transformation did happen when Sir Martin left, so we can all agree on that one. But he's still brilliant. I love listening to him, and you know, I'll talk maybe a little bit later when we come on to the competitive nature of our businesses and how we pitch, but he's built a phenomenal business, and clients love it. So to answer Omar's question, Geometry, at the end of last year, we were folded into VMLY&R as an entity, essentially to create a new marketing offer for CMOs. And the reason for that is, if you think about a CMO's role today and how it's changed, it's all about really understanding the full marketing funnel from top to bottom, as we always say, and embracing marketing and sales. And that's been a massive shift for a lot of marketeers, is really embracing and understanding the sales channels. So everything we do is about shortening that purchase journey, as we call it, creating brand experiences, customer experiences, and driving conversion in one. And that, again, has been a huge change, where we always talk about media channels are retail channels, and retail channels are media channels, because you can drive conversion now, anytime, any place, anywhere. And conversion is an art. Really understanding people's behaviors, understanding their mindsets, understanding the data that sits behind that, understanding where people are purchasing and how people are purchasing, really starts to inform a lot of our strategies. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of B2C companies, a lot of B2B companies really shift their marketing activities and putting people's behavior at the center of everything that they do, to understand the nuances of behaviors. So when we talk about channels, we don't always refer to media channels. We talk about commerce channels. And again, it's a mindset shift to really start to drive that notion that commerce really does happen everywhere, and we can no longer separate those two things. So a bit of a long answer to...
No, and it dovetails, dare I say, even summarises quite well a lot of what we heard before the break. But the nagging question I have is, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to return to normality, whatever that looks like next year. Hopefully we can start saying post-pandemic with confidence. So what's going to happen in terms of e-commerce? Is everything going to spring back? What do you think which channels are ones to look out for? And maybe you're going to change your name back to Geometry because you're going to bounce back, or what's going to happen?
So the answer is, I do think things are going to recalibrate a little bit. So we have seen exponential. We probably will never see these levels of growth in any one single marketing discipline again, the way they have accelerated over the last couple of years. I mean, in the UK alone, about a third of retail sales go through e-commerce channels now, which is huge. There are already predictions that going into next year, you know, if we're at like 31% now, it'll come back down to 28, 27%. And what's driving that is the emergence of different channels and how people are engaging with different categories, different brands. But also, let's not underestimate the importance of the physical experience. And everything that we're seeing today, and a lot of the new research that's coming out with Gen Zers especially, is people actually do want a physical experience, but they want a digital experience embedded in the physical experience. And so much of that we're starting to see in China, in the East. We're seeing brands really deliver these phenomenal digital experiences with a physical component and the other way around. And I'm going to call out some numbers just to give us, you talk about which channels are really important. So we've just had the Alibaba Global Festival, the 11/11, and pre-11/11, live streaming, live shopping streaming, so that people are, influencers are showing off all of their brands. They had 140,000 live shopping streams. It generated $3.1 billion over a 24-hour period. And the two top influencers who were videoing live and pushing out all of this shopping content earned $450 million each between sales, commission, and fees. Now, it's almost
I made the wrong job for sure.
Well, if you think about it, right? I mean, it's a model that we haven't really even imagined yet in the UK. When we start to think about the extent that people can sell online to other people and the speed at which it's driving sales and just changing the dynamic. But we are seeing it come. We are seeing the emergence of live streaming, the investment in live streaming. It's one of the reasons Sir Martin talked about TikTok as one of those channels that's really pushing through. It's because it feels very real to people, because they're watching other people. I think we're seeing brand ambassadors through salespeople emerge in this country. That we haven't looked at that as a channel, but that will be a sales channel. Dixon's did an amazing...
What do you mean specifically when you say that? I think of Avon representatives.
Exactly. It's a sales channel in the sense that we will have people in a very traditional way that we used to have selling to other people, but they're now going to do it as if they were an e-influencer. They are going to be online helping people with whatever it is that they want to purchase, and they will become e-sellers. Dixons are doing it now. When you go onto the Dixons website and you want to buy your washing machine, you have somebody who actually works in the store helping you buy your washing machine. It's a real shift in how people are selling. Somebody earlier was talking about startup brands, and startup brands are really catching on to that very, very quickly and having, masses of brand ambassadors that are paid a commission, and all they do is they go and sell. And Facebook are giving them e-stores. So we're going to see such a fragmentation of how people start to shop. And it isn't all going to be sold through the social channels, but the social channels will absolutely influence what people shop.
Okay, help me out here, because in the last few weeks I've read stories about Amazon are planning on launching loads of brick and mortar stores. Meta is apparently looking to ape Apple stores going forwards. So why are those sorts of brands investing more in brick and mortar? Are they an aberration because they're such big mega brands, or is that part of a trend which sounds slightly contradictory to what you've just been talking about?
So I think there's probably two answers there. One is Amazon has the data, so they understand how people are shopping their platform. They understand how to engage people, and they are opening department stores in the United States, which is their next foray into the retail physical experience, in order to be able to have the benefit of both, to be able to deliver a physical Amazon experience as a department store, using their online data to inform how they organize that store. I think with Meta, it's more people want to trial the Oculus Rift and they want to experience, the virtual reality world that Meta is so heavily investing in. And if you walk up and down Bond Street or Regent Street or Oxford Street, there's so many flagship stores, aren't there? Dyson, Microsoft, they're all there, but they're not really selling anything. But it's the experience of going into those stores and actually experiencing the product that is so important. And I don't know for sure, Omar, but I anticipate that that's what Meta is going to do, is give people the Meta experience in a physical environment.
Interesting you mentioned specifically VR and Oculus, because when Mark Zuckerberg talked about the Metaverse 2 or 3 years ago, you're kind of left wondering, well, are people really going to be using these headsets and walking around their living rooms or whatever's going to happen? Is that really the future? Is that really realistic? But to your point, do you think that's just because there hasn't been enough, they almost haven't aggressively kind of shown people what the technology can do, and maybe that cultural shift will happen?
So at the moment, I think, yes, we will be walking around with the headsets on, because I think the technology hasn't taken us further than that. And people are pretty comfortable. I think those people who are highly engaged in it are pretty comfortable doing that. But I think anything new that happens like that, you've got to overcome those barriers of people feeling a bit silly walking around with a headset on. But once they overcome that, I think people will really engage with it. And you know, we only started hearing about Meta 12 months ago. Now people are spending £5,000 on Dior Meta handbags that don't exist, which, quite frankly, I find fascinating. But it's becoming mainstream. And that's when that needle will shift. And suddenly, you know, next Christmas, everyone will be giving each other Oculus Rift headsets. If it's not this Christmas, if you can get your hands on them.
If you have wealthy friends, I'm sure you might. We've got about 5 minutes left. We're on a tight schedule, but does anyone have any questions? If not, I've got loads. Just wave your hand. I'll keep looking around. Just wave your hand if you've got any questions. Ian Whitaker has a question. The microphone's just on its way. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for that, Michelle. That was great. One question, actually, just come back to that last point in terms of your the £5,000 Dior handbag and the Metaverse. I guess a sort of question we'll have about that, Metaverse sort of specifically, but more in general. We tend to see these things from our own perspectives, and obviously for the people in this room, so that the idea of the Metaverse, or indeed, you know, streaming services or anything like that, would seem to be normal, and we tend to extrapolate that across the rest of the population. But if you look at the rest of the population's habits, they tend to be somewhat different. I mean, do you really think that sort of many of these things will truly become sort of mass market and permeate down into the mass of the population, or do you think they're likely to remain sort of very much niches, sort of within a well-off segment?
So it's a great question, and the Dior handbag is probably an extreme example. What I do think is that our worlds of physical and digital are blending. I think we are going to move into a space where we will all have digital versions of ourselves, and we will have digital lives that are maybe synonymous with our physical lives and may not be synonymous with our physical lives. And everything that I described earlier about Meta is currency, isn't it? It's what people exchange with each other in that sort of social interaction. And I do think the currency in the digital space is definitely going to expand.
Question in front here.
Question about the Metaverse too, and I'm conscious that we have somebody from Meta in the room, but do you think it will be something built from the top down or bottom up? In other words, coming back to the e-commerce point, do you think stores will be a concession in a bigger electronic department store, or do you think that from the top down the structure of that department store will be more imposed upon those that want to be a part of it?
So I'm going to try and I could be completely, you know, off what Meta are actually doing, but I don't think we'll have concepts anymore of stores necessarily curating experiences for us. I think we're going to move into spaces that we create for ourselves. We will curate ourselves what we want around us, and I think that that's probably the biggest shift, and I think that that's going to be the power of Meta, is that I can create everything I want around me, and no longer do I have to walk into anyone else's environment to access whatever it is I want to access. You know, and that is probably the role that data is going to have to play, to get to know me so well that I can have access to everything I want around me and I curate it myself.
We've just entered in quite an interesting discussion about how the role of the consumer is going to adapt. But what do you think about brands and CMOs and marketing teams? I mean, how are they going to have to transform in terms of adapting to these new challenges? Because we haven't really been talking about traditional marketing in any of this conversation thus far.
It's difficult. I think you know, we have to always be on a continuous learning journey. So one is a lot of our clients are breaking down the marketing departments. So literally getting rid of, you know, the silos that exist in marketing and trying to retrain people to think end-to-end journeys, no longer where are you driving awareness, how are you driving engagement, where are you driving conversion, what's the post-purchase usage, trying to break all of that down so people are able to see an end-to-end journey. And that is difficult because it's still very new. We've seen a lot of clients get rid of a lot of layers of people within organizations. Nestle, I mean, I don't mind in this room talking about this, talk now about channel-less communication. So they've got rid of their channel experts. They've got rid of category experts. And they're really focused now on just behavior and starting to understand how people are behaving and how you design around that. So I think marketing won't be a channel-led business in the future. It will be a behavior-led business because we have to understand how people are engaging with us and how people want to engage with us. And almost, you know, switching the power to give it to the consumer and let them curate around you rather than you trying to impose your brand values on them.
Very interesting. Perhaps Michael Gove was right. We have had enough of experts, so there you go. Please give a big hand to Michelle Whelan. Thank you.
Thanks, Omar.
Thank you.